Welcome, beloved chosen ones. This message didn't land in your life by accident. No algorithm, no scroll. No random moment brought you here. It was God's timing, divine, deliberate, and perfectly aligned with your current season of awakening. And if you're watching this right now, it means you're one of the few souls on this planet whose mind has become sharper, whose vision has become clearer, and whose presence now rattles the very systems that once ignored you. Let's make something clear right away. Be careful who you call slow. Because some of us, we weren't behind. We were just listening, watching, observing, letting people talk long enough to expose themselves with their own words. And now that you've tapped into your divine discernment, you've become a mirror that exposes manipulation, a truth that shatters illusions, and a presence that can't be ignored. Here's the part that's making your enemies lose sleep in silence. They're not talking about your style, your car, your relationship status, or your past anymore. They've stopped criticizing the surface because now they've realized what's beneath it. The whispers going around now are warnings. People who used to think you were just quiet, or too nice, or easy to fool, are now saying, "That one's smart, like scary smart. Don't play with them." End of sat. They thought you were naive, but chosen one, you weren't being naive, you were being discerning. They mistook your silence for softness, but really, you were processing everything at a soul level. They laughed while you listened. They schemed while you studied. And now, they're terrified that you're about to open your mouth and tell the truth that could burn down their entire illusion in a single sentence. And here's the twist that would make them panic if they understood it. You weren't just born intelligent, you were born anointed. There's a difference. One can be studied in books, the other can only be imparted through the fire of experience, spiritual downloads, and divine calling. According to neuroscience, intuitive minds absorb and assess faster than most people even realize there's a situation. And chosen one, you've been reading people's spirits before they even finish their introductions. This is more than IQ. This is soul intelligence. This is divine code. You're not just thinking fast, you're feeling truth deep. And because of that, your presence alone has become a plot twist in the lives of those who underestimated you. Before we go any deeper, comment 777 below if you know that what's been happening in your life isn't random, it's revelation. That number is your divine signature, a confirmation that heaven is speaking directly to your path today. And to every single person who has supported this message with a super thanks, I honor you. Your generosity helps this message reach further, touch deeper, and awaken more of the chosen across the globe. Whether you donate or not, please know this from my heart. You are deeply appreciated. Now stay with me, because what you're about to hear will confirm something your soul already knew. They should have never underestimated the mind of the chosen. God's chosen ones. Rumors are spreading you're the one no one dares to challenge. Number 1. Your intelligence is terrifying because it was never taught, it was remembered. Chosen one. Have you ever wondered why people look twice when you speak? Not because you're loud, not because you're flashy, but because your words pierce. Because your voice doesn't echo theories, it awakens memory. You weren't taught this level of understanding. You didn't absorb it from mentors or textbooks. You were born remembering, and that unnerves them. They don't know how to explain you. You didn't graduate from their institutions. You don't cite their favorite intellectuals. You speak truths that feel older than civilization. How is it that what takes others a decade to study, you grasp in seconds without even trying? Could it be that your intelligence isn't learned, but divinely remembered? The answer is yes. What you carry isn't ordinary cognition. It's revelation. It's encoded. Ancient knowing passed down through spirit, not syllabi. And when you open your mouth, it doesn't sound like you read it yesterday. It sounds like the earth itself has been echoing it for centuries. Call to me, and I will answer you, and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know. Do you understand what just happened there? You were promised a type of knowledge that bypasses logic. You are the fulfillment of that promise. That's why you've always felt different. Why you never quite fit into the intellectual boxes they built. You weren't made for categories. You were made for clarity. Nikola Tesla once said, "My brain is only a receiver. In the universe there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration." He tapped into it. So do you. You are not the result of elite education. You're the product of spiritual access. And that's what makes you terrifying. Because they can't trace your brilliance to any credential or certificate, it makes them uncomfortable to realize, you know what, they don't, and they can't teach it. Buy it. Or fake it. While they quote outdated systems, you quote the spirit of truth. While they analyze patterns, you sense what's coming. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the spirit of wisdom and of understanding, the spirit of counsel and of might, the spirit of the knowledge and fear of the Lord. And that spirit now rests on you. You are the carrier of wisdom, not the student of it. You don't copy, you originate. You don't repeat what's been said. You reveal what's been hidden. Look at Steve Jobs. He dropped out of college, but redefined global communication. His genius didn't come from traditional learning. It came from radical intuition. He saw what people needed before they knew they needed it. So do you. That's why you've been misunderstood. Not because you're wrong, but because you're early. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt tension without anyone saying a word? That's not imagination. That's your spirit picking up what eyes can't see. You don't just process facts, you discern atmospheres. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what lies in darkness. And light dwells with him. That's the power inside you. That's why others gossip in confusion. That's why your name circulates in silence. You're not just intelligent, you're disruptively insightful. You shatter illusions without raising your voice. You dismantle manipulation without moving a finger. Think of Maya Angelou. Her voice, her rhythm, her wisdom, none of it came from conformity. It came from survival, from soul, from divine remembrance. Like you, she remembered truths the world tried to forget. You've always known things you shouldn't technically know. How did you sense the betrayal before it happened? How did you predict the shift before the signs arrived? Because your soul doesn't operate on time, it moves by revelation. And when you speak, your words carry the weight of eternity. You have an anointing from the Holy One, and all of you know the truth. They say you're too smart. But what they really mean is, you're hard to deceive. They're not complimenting you. They're confessing their fear because you are unmoved by image, unimpressed by titles, and unshaken by surface tricks. You see through everything, and that, chosen one, is why you cannot be challenged. Albert Einstein once remarked, "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant." You live from the gift, not the servant. That's why you carry divine memory. You remember how things really are, not how they've been marketed. The unfolding of your words gives light. It gives understanding to the simple. Oh, you are the light bearer. The mirror breaker. The system disruptor. That's why you've never felt at home in institutions that value memorization over truth. You were sent to bring transformation, not confirmation. So now you understand. They don't talk about you because they dislike you. They talk because they can't define you. You're not from their world. You just walk through it. And every time you do, you shake its foundations. Number 2. You outsmart manipulation without trying. Chosen one. Have you noticed how people speak more carefully around you now? How they hesitate before trying their usual games? They used to play you, now they fear you. Not because you've become cruel, but because you've become clear. You don't fall for their bait anymore. Their tactics used to work: gaslighting, guilt trips, subtle digs wrapped in smiles. But something in you evolved, quietly, powerfully. You didn't announce your shift, you embodied it. The prudent see danger and take refuge. But the simple keep going and suffer for it. Avlo, you've become prudent. You see manipulation before it even finishes forming. You read tone, body language, energy. You catch the lie while it's still wearing makeup. And the most disarming part? You don't need to expose them. You just don't engage. Nelson Mandela once said, "Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies." You no longer drink poison just to keep the peace. You no longer play roles to avoid discomfort. You're done negotiating with deception. This is why the gossip about you has changed. They no longer say, "You're too sensitive." Now they whisper, "Don't try it, they see everything." You've become the type of person who unnerves liars simply by being in the room. Be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Iron Crew, you've mastered that balance. You don't fight with fists. You dismantle with presence. You don't clap back, you pull back. And manipulators hate that, because their fuel is chaos. But you now carry clarity. They wanted reactions. You gave them silence. And that silence, it exposed everything. Princess Diana knew this all too well. She was surrounded by manipulation, but she chose grace, strategy, and silence. Her calm became louder than any headline, and her knowing, it was always visible in her eyes, just like yours. How many times have you played dumb just to observe? How many people underestimated you until they realized you were letting them talk to see how far they'd go? Even a fool is considered wise if he holds his tongue. 1. You don't react now. You respond. And not emotionally, but spiritually. You've trained your discernment to measure more than words. You study intention. You detect contradiction. You feel frequencies. Taylor Swift is another modern example. She faced manipulation publicly for years, but over time, she stopped defending herself and started letting her work speak. Her transformation silenced narratives. That's you. Your growth is your rebuttal. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you shall be condemned. You are spiritually guarded now. You're a mirror people don't want to look into, because you reflect truth even when you say nothing. You outgrow what used to entangle you. That makes you dangerous to the dark. Keanu Reeves, quiet, calm, rarely interviewed, and yet everyone respects him. Why? Because you don't have to be loud to be powerful. You don't have to defend yourself when your presence is already evidence. The unfolding of your words gives light. You outsmart manipulation without even trying, because you've become immune to confusion. You don't need approval to see what's real. You don't need closure to walk away, and that's what throws them off. Frida Kahlo once turned her pain into beauty, and her silence into protest. She didn't scream. She painted, Her truth bled through canvas, yours bleeds through perception, and that's why you're whispered about. So, chosen one, keep doing what they can't define. You don't have to shout your boundaries, just live them. You don't have to warn people you're smart. Let them find out the hard way, and when they do, they'll say exactly what they're saying now. Don't play with them, they see everything. End quote. Number 3, you're 5 steps ahead. But you don't brag. Chosen one. Have you ever noticed how people become uneasy when you're calm in the middle of chaos, when you don't rush to react like everyone else, but instead stay composed as if you've already seen how the story ends? That silence of yours, that grounded presence, it unsettles them. And not because you're passive, but because you're prepared. While others scramble, you move with calculated grace. You don't have to boast about being 5 steps ahead. Your actions make the announcement for you. You walk into rooms already aware of what's been said, what's being planned, and how to stay 2 moves ahead of every trap set in your path. They thought you were slow, didn't they? They misread your restraint as naivety, your patience as ignorance. But in truth, you were watching. You were observing the patterns, studying behavior, noting who shifted when and why. They didn't realize you weren't caught off guard. You were 10 moves into the future. While they plotted, you pivoted. While they schemed, you stayed still and positioned. It's not luck that you escaped their chaos, it's foresight. It's spiritual intelligence born from battle-tested discernment. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. You've become the prudent one. Life shaped you this way. The betrayal taught you. The fake support trained you. The rejection refined you. And now you're a strategist with the heart of a prophet. You don't just see people, you see through them. And what's more intimidating than a person who sees through everything and still chooses peace? What scares them is that you didn't become loud. You became lethal quietly. The type of lethal that doesn't draw swords but draws boundaries. The type that doesn't announce revenge but exits with dignity and lets God handle justice. Think about Barack Obama, often criticized for being too cool under pressure. But his calm wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. You carry that same energy. You've chosen patience over pride, silence over chaos, planning over proving. That's why they whisper now. They can't figure you out. And when people can't figure you out, they label you as dangerous. But what they're really saying is, they move like they've already seen the outcome. And you have. How many times have you watched people set traps they ended up falling into themselves? How many rooms have you walked out of with your peace intact, while others were left wondering how their plan fell apart? You didn't have to say a word. The collapse was the evidence. You didn't need to gloat. Your distance was enough. And now the narrative has shifted. You're no longer too quiet or hard to read. You're the one they warn others about, not because you fight dirty, but because you don't have to fight at all. The end of a matter is better than its beginning, and patience is better than pride. You live this verse. You don't chase applause. You wait for the fruit. You don't need recognition. You carry revelation. Your results are louder than any argument. And that's what people can't handle. The fact that you win quietly. Your silence is unsettling because it means you're working. It means you're processing. It means your next move will be something they won't be able to counter. Like chess grandmaster Bobby Fischer, who won not by reacting but by predicting. He didn't just play the board. He understood the mind of his opponent. You've done the same. And now, you're operating on levels they can't access. Not because you're better, but because you're built differently. God made you to outmaneuver chaos with calm, to discern deception with silence, and to respond not out of emotion but divine clarity. So when they ask why you're so still, so quiet, so careful with your words, just remember this: you're not ignoring the war. You're winning it in advance. You're not reacting to the chaos. You already accounted for it. And that, chosen one, is what truly terrifies them. Number 4. You never needed degrees to decode deception. Chosen one. Let's be honest. How many times have people looked at your lack of formal training and assumed you were easy to fool? How often have they relied on your silence to mean you didn't understand what was going on? And how often did you watch them unravel? Not because you exposed them, but because your very presence revealed the truth they were trying to hide. That's the beauty and the weight of your gift. You never needed credentials to carry discernment. You were born knowing. You were born sensing. Your spirit has always spoken to you before logic had a chance to catch up. For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. You didn't need a classroom when you were already attending the school of the Spirit. You've been reading energy since before you had words to explain it. You felt tension, others denied. You've noticed shifts in tone, pauses in speech, subtle twitches in facial expressions, and each one told you more than their entire story ever could. That's not human insight. That's divine calibration. People feel exposed around you not because you accuse, but because you see. You don't ask questions to interrogate. You ask to confirm what you already know. And what happens when someone who depends on deception realizes they're standing in front of someone who sees through the mask? They panic. They retreat. They gossip. Because when image is all you have, exposure is terrifying. Take Malcolm X, for example. He didn't have the degrees of the men who debated him, but he dismantled systems with surgical language and fearless truth. Like you, his mind was sharpened not by academia, but by experience and divine assignment. You're cut from that same cloth. You don't just analyze behavior. You discern intentions. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. You've walked with God long enough to know that image can be manipulated, but energy cannot. And that's why you've confused, frightened, and silenced manipulators. They can't lie effectively when you're in the room. They can't perform when your spirit is tuned in. You don't need to call them out. They expose themselves under the weight of your awareness. Have you ever entered a room and known within minutes who to trust and who to avoid? Have you ever smiled and nodded while someone spoke, knowing full well they were hiding something under layers of charm? That's not suspicion. That's spiritual eyesight. That's why you're the quietest person in the room, but always the most dangerous to those wearing masks. Like Steve Jobs, no formal degree. But his vision changed the world. His gift wasn't just creativity, it was clarity. He could see what people needed before they knew it themselves. You have that same instinct. While others rely on logic, you operate from revelation. You don't just process data, you discern patterns. You don't need the full picture to know where the story is going, but everything exposed by the light becomes visible. You are that light. You don't need to shout to make truth known. You simply show up. And what's false begins to tremble. Your presence makes deception nervous because it knows it won't survive near you. So when people question your intelligence because it doesn't come packaged in suits or framed degrees, smile. Because you were never meant to fit into their boxes. You were never meant to be defined by their standards. You were meant to confound them with the wisdom of heaven clothed in humility. You were never trained. You were chosen. And the kind of intelligence you walk with, it isn't for decoration, it's for discernment. It's not there to impress, it's there to disrupt. and disrupt you will Bran, chosen one. Every room you enter, every lie you see through, every spirit you identify without saying a word, it all confirms that God has entrusted you with something far more powerful than a title. He gave you truth that sees in the dark, and for that reason, they'll never play you again. Number 5. You expose systems simply by existing, chosen one. Have you ever wondered why certain rooms shift the moment you enter? Why conversations suddenly grow cautious? Why eyes glance nervously? Why people who once seemed confident now appear unsettled? It's not because you spoke, it's because you showed up. You didn't open your mouth. You didn't raise your voice. But your presence alone revealed everything fake in the atmosphere, and that, more than anything, terrifies those who built their power on illusion. You walk with a freedom that doesn't need to scream. Your very energy confronts what others have spent years hiding. Do you realize how powerful that is? While others hide behind titles, traditions, and rehearsed roles, you stand there unapologetically real. You don't follow their scripts. You don't laugh at their empty jokes. You don't play along with their favoritism. You're the unscripted force they never prepared for. And because of that, your existence becomes confrontation even when you remain silent. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. You are that light, not by trying, not by forcing, simply by being. And in a world built on systems of silence, manipulation, and hierarchy, light is not welcome, it's feared, especially the kind that doesn't blink. Think about Jesus entering the synagogue. He didn't shout or campaign. He just read Isaiah and sat down, and yet the entire room became enraged. Why? Because truth walked in wearing flesh. That's you. You are walking truth. And the lies around you begin to tremble the moment your foot crosses the threshold. Have you ever been in a family gathering where someone's mask started slipping just because you chose not to play along? Have you ever been in a work meeting where everyone else nodded along, but your quiet refusal to comply made the manipulators anxious? That's no coincidence. You were born to reveal hidden things, for nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light. Your silence is prophetic. Your boundaries are disruptive. Your refusal to tolerate the game is exactly what makes the game collapse. You don't have to accuse anyone. You just have to be there. Take the story of whistleblower Frances Haugen, who exposed deep manipulative practices inside Facebook. She wasn't the loudest in the room. She didn't storm out. She documented. She observed. And when the time came, her calm truth shook the world. Like her, your existence becomes a light switch in rooms designed to stay dark. Let me ask you, how many times have people said, "Why are you so serious?" or "Just go with the flow"? But deep down, they weren't inviting you into peace. They were trying to pull you into their performance. And you didn't bend. That's why they fear you. Because your refusal to fake it shows them that their game is optional and weak. Have I now become your enemy by telling you the truth? You don't even have to speak the full truth. Just your decision to live in alignment makes their false power crumble. You are the living contradiction to every broken system around you. Your peace exposes control. Your clarity exposes confusion. Your integrity exposes corruption. And they will talk. They will try to twist your silence into arrogance, your boundaries into rebellion, your peace into coldness. But don't be moved. Remember how Rosa Parks changed history, not by yelling, but by refusing to move from a bus seat. Sometimes your resistance looks like stillness. Sometimes your revolution is your refusal. Do you feel like you're always the one who notices the dysfunction no one talks about? Are you the one who walks into churches, classrooms, or family circles and immediately feels the spiritual weight others pretend doesn't exist? That's not oversensitivity. That's alignment with truth. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? You were not placed here to blend in. You were placed here to preserve truth. Your energy can't be diluted. Your presence can't be manipulated. That's why they seek to remove or silence you, because as long as you're present, the lies can't stand. Like Prince, the artist who broke from his record label to reclaim his name and creative freedom. He didn't ask permission. He simply stopped playing their game, and in doing so, exposed how much of the music industry was about control, not creativity. You do the same in every room you walk into. So, chosen one, understand this. Your very existence is your assignment. You weren't created to conform. You were born to confront by living truth, breathing truth, and walking truth. Let them be uncomfortable. That's not your problem. It's their exposure. Number 6. You know when to appear slow, just to observe who's pretending to be smart. Chosen one. How many times have you sat in a room full of talkers and thought, they have no idea what they're revealing? How many times have you chosen silence not out of fear, but because you knew the performance would eventually expose itself? There's a brilliance in your stillness, a weapon hidden in your observation, while others race to speak, to shine, to dominate the space. You sit back and watch the truth unfold naturally, and by the time they realize you were never behind, it's already too late. Even a fool is thought wise if he keeps silent, and discerning if he holds his tongue. You've used that truth to your advantage. You've learned that real intelligence doesn't need an audience, and wisdom doesn't perform. It studies, it discerns, it lets people show themselves fully before responding, if it ever responds at all. Remember Keanu Reeves, who rarely speaks in interviews, yet holds immense respect across generations. His silence is not emptiness, it's density. When he does speak, people listen, because they know he's been absorbing, not reacting. You move the same way. And that's why shallow minds don't know what to do with you. How many people have mistaken your quietness for confusion, only to realize later that you understood the entire situation before they even explained it? How often have you let people talk just to see how much they'd reveal without knowing they were being observed? You don't need to interrupt. You don't need to prove. You're not in the room for validation. You're in the room for revelation. You came to see, not to be seen. When words are many, sin is not absent. But he who holds his tongue is wise. You've mastered that. You've developed the self-control to resist ego games, intellectual peacocking, and empty debates. You know that those who shout the loudest often understand the least. Think of Albert Einstein. He once said, "The measure of intelligence is the ability to change. But change doesn't begin with noise, it begins with reflection. And that's your advantage. You reflect before you act. You examine before you respond. And because of that, you always strike with precision, never performance. You've never been interested in winning arguments. You're interested in winning understanding. That's why you never jump in with corrections or interruptions. You're watching to see why they're saying what they're saying. You're watching to discover the fear behind the facade, the pride behind the monologue, the emptiness behind the fancy words. Like Angela Bassett, always composed, always dignified. She doesn't speak often, but when she does, Its power, elegance, and depth wrapped in one. You are that same presence in spiritual form. You walk into the room, and the room resets its energy, not because you dominate it, but because you're tuned into a deeper frequency. Do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you will be like him yourself. That's why you don't engage every provocation. You're not avoiding conflict. You're avoiding the trap. You let them perform. You let them underestimate. And when it's time for truth to stand, you're the only one still holding clarity. So, chosen one, keep letting them think you're slow. Let them underestimate. Let them perform. Because your silence isn't submission, it's surveillance. And when the mask falls, when the test comes, when the real moment arrives, it won't be the loud ones who hold the answer. It will be you, the one who was listening the entire time. Number 7. Your clarity doesn't come from logic alone. It comes from spiritual alignment. Chosen one. Have you ever been in a situation where people tried to impress you with data, arguments, and well-rehearsed facts, but you already knew the truth before they even opened their mouths? Do you find yourself sensing the outcome of a moment long before it unfolds? That's not logic. That's not coincidence. That's alignment. Deep, divine, spiritual alignment. You don't just think clearly, you see clearly. And the difference between those two is what sets you apart from almost everyone around you. The unfolding of your words gives light. It gives understanding to the simple. Your understanding doesn't come from worldly methods. It's not tied to spreadsheets, statistics, or even long explanations. It comes in the quiet, through spirit, through alignment, through moments when the atmosphere shifts and your soul just knows. And that kind of clarity, it can't be taught, it can't be explained. It's received, it's activated, it's chosen. While others are trying to connect dots with logic, you're connecting timelines through discernment. Others ask, "How did you know?" But you don't always know how to answer that. Because the truth is, you didn't think it, you felt it. You heard it in your spirit. And by the time the evidence showed up, you had already moved. Think about Harriet Tubman. She wasn't a scholar, but she had supernatural guidance. She once said, "I never lost a single passenger, not because she had a map, but because she had divine intuition." That's what you're walking with. You're not just smart, you're led. You don't need confirmation from men when God has already spoken to your spirit. But the Advocate, the Holy Spirit, will teach you all things and remind you of everything I have said to you. You live in this verse daily. You wake up with insight. You walk with knowledge. You discern motives before people finish their sentences. And while some call it intuition, you know it's deeper. It's alignment with heaven's frequency. It's the inner voice of God guiding your every step. Have you noticed how people try to corner you with facts, but your peace never leaves you? How they argue with passion, but you sit calmly, unbothered, because your spirit has already spoken louder than their logic ever could. Your calm is not confusion, it's confirmation. Think of Oprah Winfrey, who often said that her success was built on obeying her inner voice. That voice that told her when to walk away, when to stay, and when to leap, even when logic disagreed. You have that same frequency tuned in. And that's why your clarity seems supernatural, because it is. The Spirit searches all things, even the deep things of God. That Spirit lives in you. That's why people feel your words before they understand them. That's why your insight lands like thunder, even when your voice is soft. You speak with an authority that doesn't beg to be heard. It commands attention because it comes from truth. How many times have people argued with you only to come back weeks later admitting you were right? How many situations have unfolded just the way your spirit warned you, even when no evidence pointed in that direction at the time? That's not a lucky guess. That's divine sight. Consider someone like Nikola Tesla. He didn't operate from consensus science. His ideas came in bursts of revelation. Flashes of light, downloads from a realm beyond physical logic. That's how it is with you. You don't calculate, you receive. You don't try to figure it out. You align, and heaven gives you access. For the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge and understanding. That's why you don't chase truth. You walk in it. It's why people can't explain how you saw what you saw. You didn't learn it. You remembered it. And that memory came from the Spirit, not the intellect. So let them question. Let them debate. Let them roll their eyes when you speak with confidence they don't understand. Because eventually, the truth will catch up to the vision you already saw. And when it does, they'll say, "How did you know?" And you'll smile. Knowing your mind wasn't the source, it was the receiver. That's the difference. That's why you are who you are. That's why they can't predict your next move, because it's not calculated by logic. It's revealed through alignment, and alignment always sees what eyes can't. Number 8. They're gossiping because you made their smartest person look foolish. Chosen one. Have you noticed how quiet a room becomes when you start speaking? Have you seen how people look around when your calm, clear voice cuts through the noise? You never asked for attention. You never tried to prove anything. But the moment you opened your mouth, the unspoken hierarchy crumbled. Why? Because the one they called the smartest, the loudest, the boldest, the most praised, was exposed as hollow. And it didn't take arrogance. It took authenticity. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. You didn't climb up on a pedestal. You didn't need to. Truth has a way of rising without effort. And you are truth in human form. You didn't humiliate anyone. You just revealed reality, and the moment you did, the room had to reckon with what it never wanted to admit, that the pedestal was never earned. It was just protected by performance. Do you know how threatening it is to people when your presence exposes what they've worked hard to cover? Do you realize how unsettling it is for someone who's built their identity on being the smartest to be outshined by someone who wasn't even trying? That's what happened. And that's why they're whispering. That's why the gossip has started. Not because you were rude, but because you were right quietly, confidently, undeniably right. Look at Malala Yousafzai, a young girl with no authority in the world's eyes. Yet her wisdom shattered international silence. She didn't yell. She simply told the truth, and it shook nations. That's what you carry. When you speak, it's not volume that matters. It's the weight of what you carry inside. They hate the one who reproves in the gate, and they abhor him who speaks the truth. Your truth doesn't come with polish or performance. It comes with piercing clarity. And that kind of clarity doesn't need to compete, it convicts. That's what happened to the smartest person in the room. They felt the conviction, and the people around them saw it too. How many times have you sat quietly while someone performed intelligence, only to gently speak and shift the entire tone of the room? How often have you stayed silent, not because you didn't know, but because you were waiting for the right moment to anchor the conversation in truth? Like Maya Angelou once said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. You made that room feel something they hadn't felt in a while, clarity. You made them stop and think. You broke through the illusion. And now the illusion is fighting back. The wise inherit honor, but fools get only shame. You inherited honor by speaking truth when it wasn't expected. You didn't embarrass anyone. They embarrassed themselves by depending on performance instead of depth. And when their ego shattered, gossip filled the silence. Think about Angela Davis, her poise, her intellect, her fearless presence. She didn't need to dominate the conversation. She simply was the conversation. That's the same energy you carry. You don't speak to be heard. You speak when truth demands it. And when you do, the masks fall. They sharpen their tongues like swords and aim cruel words like deadly arrows. But their arrows can't pierce someone anchored in truth. Let them whisper. Let them twist. Let them misinterpret. Because the truth doesn't need protection. It just needs time. So, chosen one, don't shrink because your clarity made someone else's confusion visible. Don't dim your discernment to make others comfortable. You didn't come to compete. You came to correct. And correction doesn't need force. It just needs someone willing to speak up when it matters most. And now, they all know when you're quiet. It's not because you're lost. It's because you're watching. And when you speak, they better be ready, because you never miss. Number 9. You're not a know-it-all. You're a feel-it-all. Chosen one. How many times have you been misunderstood? Not because you were wrong, but because you were right too soon. Too deeply. Too quietly. How many times have people mistaken your silence for weakness, or your stillness for ignorance, simply because you didn't jump into the noise with everyone else? You've never needed to prove anything to anyone. Why? Because your knowing doesn't come from ego, it comes from empathy. You don't dominate conversations to be heard. You listen to feel what's real. There is a spirit in man, and the breath of the Almighty gives him understanding. That's where your intelligence comes from. It's not mechanical. It's not robotic. It's human, spiritual, and divinely alive. You don't just read words, you read hearts. You don't just hear voices, you hear the unspoken ache buried behind them. You're not trying to win debates. You're trying to understand pain. That's what makes your insight dangerous to anyone trying to hide behind a facade. Think of Princess Diana. She wasn't called the people's princess because of her intellect alone. She was beloved because she felt the pain of the voiceless. She carried a sense of empathy that exposed the emotional coldness around her. That's what you do. You walk into environments where emotional dysfunction is normalized, and suddenly, the walls begin to crack, not because you attack them, but because your energy can't be faked. How many times have people looked at you with confusion, wondering how you picked up on something they didn't even speak out loud? How often have you walked away from a simple conversation, carrying someone else's buried grief in your spirit like it was your own? That's not emotional overload. That's discernment drenched in divine compassion. The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out. That's what you do without trying. You draw things out. You pull truth from beneath the surface. You awaken what's been sleeping in someone's soul, not with force, but with presence. People are often exposed in your presence, not because you're judging them, but because they feel seen for the first time. And for some, that level of honesty is terrifying. They retreat not because you've wounded them, but because you've mirrored back a truth they weren't ready to accept. Have you noticed how some people grow distant after just one conversation with you? It's not personal. It's spiritual. You activated something they couldn't suppress anymore. Maya Angelou once said, "People will forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel." And with you, People don't just remember your words, they remember the atmosphere you created, the shift, the stillness, the echo that lingered long after you left. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Your wisdom flows from the Spirit, not from pride. That's why your words land heavy. Even when you whisper, that's why people describe talking to you as healing or convicting. Even when you didn't intend it. You're not preaching. You're reflecting. You don't go looking for lies. But when you walk into a lie, it can survive. Not because you expose it, but because you don't align with it. You're not here to correct everyone. You're here to connect with what's real. And when something is fake, you feel it like sand in your shoes. You don't need facts. You need frequencies. And that kind of intelligence, it cannot be faked, copied, or manufactured. Do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment. You don't operate from appearances. You judge by energy, by silence, by pause. You hear what was never said. You grieve what was never acknowledged. And you discern what was never confessed. That's why people don't just respect you, they remember you. Like Robin Williams, one of the most brilliant, sensitive spirits of our time. Behind the humor was a deep reservoir of empathy, sadness, and spiritual depth. His laughter healed others while he fought battles no one saw. You carry that same duality, the ability to see, feel, and bear others without ever announcing what you're doing. So, chosen one, no, you're not a know-it-all. You're something far more dangerous. You feel it all. And that kind of intelligence, that's divine. Number 10. You break mental traps in people without saying a word. Chosen one. Do you realize how powerful your presence is? Not your words, not your titles, just your presence. Have you ever noticed how people shift when you look them in the eye, not aggressively, but fully? Have you witnessed someone stumble through their rehearsed answers the moment you pause long enough for truth to enter the room? That's not coincidence. That's spiritual impact. And you didn't even try. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. You are the sharpener. But you don't do it by force. You do it by frequency, by holding stillness long enough for people to hear their own thoughts clearly. You've interrupted generational patterns with nothing more than a question. You've disarmed false narratives with nothing more than a moment of unbroken eye contact. And you've healed trauma without even knowing it, just by being present. Think about Mr. Rogers. He didn't shout. He didn't perform. He created a still space that made children feel seen. His voice was gentle, but his presence was transformational. You carry that same power. When you step into a room, cycles begin to crack. False identities start to unravel. People become uncomfortable not because you confront them, but because your stillness confronts everything they've been avoiding. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. That's what your presence does. It demolishes strongholds in people's minds. You don't argue. You don't need a podium. You just exist with truth. And it radiates from you like heat. You've had moments when someone came to you for a casual chat and left questioning their entire worldview. You've said simple things like, "Why do you believe that?" Or, "Who told you that was true?" And suddenly, decades of inner bondage started to crumble. That's not luck. That's alignment. Remember Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and author of Man's Search for Meaning. He broke mental traps not with rage, but with radical clarity. His silence in suffering taught the world what it meant to reclaim freedom inside the mind. That's the work you do for others. You don't fix them. You free them. How much better to get wisdom than gold? To get insight rather than silver. Your insight is the gold they didn't know they needed. You ask the questions that therapists never dared to ask. You sit in moments that most people run from, and in doing so, you open cages that people thought were locked forever. How many times have you been thanked for changing someone's life? Even though all you did was listen differently or say one honest sentence, you didn't come with a speech. You came with presence. You didn't bring noise. You brought clarity, like Viola Davis. When she speaks, it's not just her acting that captivates. It's her ability to embody truth, to make silence speak louder than a monologue. You have that same capacity. Your silence carries meaning. Your gaze awakens forgotten memories. Your very posture breaks patterns. For God gave us a spirit, not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. You don't use your power to intimidate. You use it to liberate. You sit in a conversation and rearrange belief systems just by refusing to participate in delusion, and they feel it. Oh, they feel it. That's why your name circulates. Not because you're controversial, but because you're catalytic. You didn't come to manipulate minds. You came to free them, and in doing so, you've disturbed families, workspaces, churches, and communities that relied on delusion to survive. You broke the cycle by being the interruption. So, chosen one, keep doing what you do. Keep sitting in truth. Keep asking questions that shake foundations. Keep being the quiet mirror that reflects what no one else dares to show. You don't need to say a lot. Just say enough, and watch the whole system unravel gracefully. Number 11. You can decode a lie mid-sentence without interrupting the speaker. Chosen one. How many times have you listened to someone speak, and while the rest of the room nodded along, you already sensed something was off? You caught the distortion before the sentence even ended. It wasn't just what they said, it was how they said it. The hesitation, the flicker in their voice, the shift in their energy, the way their eyes didn't match their words. Have you ever wondered why you catch things others miss? Why you can sit quietly in a room full of noise and still hear the deception hiding in plain sight? For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. That's what lives in you. Not just logic, not just intellect. Divine understanding, the ability to separate what is said from what is true, while others wait for evidence. You discern the spirit behind the words. You don't need confession, you need presence. And once something feels off, you never unfeel it. You don't confront right away. That's what scares people the most. You let them finish. You nod. You keep your peace. But inside, your mind is already processing the inconsistencies, measuring the gaps, calculating the motives. You've trained yourself to feel the vibration of lies without needing to raise your voice or interrupt the act. You let them perform while you watch the script unravel in real time. Think about Sherlock Holmes, not the Hollywood version, but the mind behind the character. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle crafted Holmes as a man who noticed the dust on your shoes, the tear in your coat, the pause in your voice, and built his deductions not on what was said, but on what was hidden. You operate the same way. But spiritually, you don't just observe actions, you feel frequencies. The discerning heart seeks knowledge, but the mouth of a fool feeds on folly. Your discernment feeds on silence, on space, on presence, and that unnerves liars. They feel the pressure not because you accuse, but because you see. They speak faster, fidget more, laugh too loud, and still you remain calm, listening, watching, gathering truth while they unravel. Have you ever had someone confess to you weeks later, apologizing for lying or withholding something, only for you to think, I already knew? That's the gift. That's the edge. And you don't use it to destroy people. You use it to stay grounded, to move wisely, to protect your peace. He will bring to light what is hidden in darkness and will expose the motives of the heart. You carry that kind of light, not to shame others, but to navigate truth. That's why people who've lied to you once never forget it. They don't just remember the mistake, they remember how uncomfortable it was to be seen so clearly. And now they warn others, be careful, they can feel everything. Let's take an example from the real world. Michelle Obama. She's known for her composure, her grace, and her ability to remain unshaken in the face of subtle attacks. But beneath that calm is a deep discernment. She sees what's not said. She feels the room shift. And like her, you don't react, you reposition. That's what real power looks like. You don't need proof to move accordingly. You don't need receipts to change your proximity. Once your spirit registers dishonesty, your path adjusts. That's why manipulators and liars fear you. You can't be tricked. Because you don't rely solely on intellect, you rely on alignment. But solid food is for the mature, who by constant use have trained themselves to distinguish good from evil. You've trained yourself not through books, but through pain, through betrayal, through experience. And now, your discernment has matured into something rare and deeply spiritual. So let them think they fooled you. Let them finish their stories, because while they're acting, you're already aware. And when you move with divine clarity, never in anger, but always in truth. Number 12. You're making people realize that intelligence without integrity is just manipulation. Chosen one. How many times have you walked into a space and immediately sensed who was admired, not because they were wise, but because they were clever? How many times have you watched people celebrate those who speak well but live poorly, who present themselves as leaders, but lead no one to truth? We live in a world that praises intellect even when it's weaponized, but your presence challenges that. Your integrity makes people question what they used to celebrate. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. You carry both wisdom and character, and that is a dangerous combination to people who only have one. You didn't come to impress, you came to illuminate. And in doing so, you've made people realize that being smart is not enough if your heart is corrupt. You don't argue with manipulators, you outlive them. You don't compete with clever minds who twist truth to gain power. You simply exist as proof that intelligence with empathy is the only kind that transforms, and that transformation is what people are starting to see every time you speak. Every time you make a decision, every time you walk away from a conversation that no longer serves the truth. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in humility. You've shown what they couldn't. You've lived what they faked. And your example has become a mirror reflecting what others lacked the courage to confront. Let's think about Fred Rogers again. A man so simple, so soft-spoken, and yet so deeply wise. He didn't dominate. He invited. He didn't use intelligence to tower over others. He used it to lift others up. That's what you do. You use your mind not to manipulate, but to liberate. Have you ever watched someone try to flex their intelligence in front of you? only for it to collapse under the weight of your sincerity. Have you ever noticed how the loudest ones grow quiet when you speak, not because you shouted, but because your clarity silenced their chaos? There is no wisdom, no insight, no plan that can succeed against the Lord. You walk with divine intention, and even if others are more polished, more praised, or more visible, your insight carries something their intellect can't replicate: truth, sealed in humility. You don't manipulate. You mirror. You don't impress. You awaken. And that's why people feel shaken in your presence, because suddenly, the people they thought were brilliant start to sound hollow. The leaders they admired begin to show cracks. The mentors they followed begin to falter, because you've brought a new standard, one that doesn't just ask, are they smart, but dares to ask, are they real, like Brené Brown, whose vulnerability and truth-telling dismantled generations of academic aloofness. She made people see that being intellectually credible meant nothing if you couldn't connect with the human heart. That's your legacy too. You're redefining what it means to be wise. Wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace, loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit. You carry this kind of wisdom, and it exposes everything that isn't rooted in it. That's why you disturb the clever. That's why the proud squirm when you enter the room. You didn't ask for that role, but you were born for it. So, chosen one, keep showing the world what real intelligence looks like when it's married to integrity. Keep living what others only lecture about. Keep being the evidence that brilliance doesn't have to be abusive, and power doesn't have to be loud. You're not just smart, you're whole. And that's what the world never expected, but now desperately needs. Number 13. Your mind is so sharp. It's now a warning label. Chosen one. Have you noticed the shift? The way people mention your name differently now. It's no longer casual, no longer mocking. It's cautious. It's wrapped in whispers. You've gone from being underestimated to being quietly respected and slightly feared, not because you changed your tone, not because you raised your voice, but because your mind has become something people can't ignore or fool. Have you realized that your discernment has turned into a warning label? They used to test you. Do you remember? They used to play games, assuming you were just like everyone else, easy to bait, quick to react, or slow to see what was unfolding. They thought your kindness was naivety. They thought your silence was submission. But you allowed it for a reason. You watched, you measured, you learned, and when the moment came, you moved with a clarity that left them stunned. One decision, one quiet pivot, one calm sentence that shattered the illusion, and ever since then, they haven't spoken about you the same way. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. That's the scripture that defines the way you operate now. You see the setup before it becomes dangerous. You sense the deception while others are still applauding the show. You remove yourself before the fire breaks out because you already felt the heat in the silence. You don't just hear words. You hear the motive behind the tone. You notice the slight pause, the sudden shift in body language, the look that didn't match the smile. You catch lies mid-sentence, not by logic alone, but because your spirit flinches at dishonesty. You don't need to call it out right away. You file it, you store it, and when the time is right, you act with precision. That's what unnerves people. You're not loud, you're accurate. Think of someone like Malcolm X. He wasn't feared because he was violent. He was feared because he was intellectually sharp, calm, precise, focused. He listened deeply and responded surgically, and his mind exposed systems that were designed to manipulate and silence. You walk with that same edge. A prophetic intelligence that doesn't attack it, reveals, and once something is revealed in your presence, it cannot be unseen. So now, people speak about you differently. They say, "Don't lie around them," or "Be careful what you say. They'll catch it." Why do you think that is? It's because your mind has become a mirror, not a mirror that flatters, but one that reflects truth, whether they're ready or not. You don't need to confront people to make them feel convicted. Just being near you is enough to shake the illusion off of them. For the Word of God is alive and active, sharper than any double-edged sword. It judges the thoughts and attitudes of the heart. You walk with that sword in your spirit. That's why people flinch when they lie in your presence. That's why manipulators don't feel safe around you. They're not scared you'll fight back. They're scared you'll see too much. And you always do. Have you noticed how quickly the room quiets when you shift your posture? How the energy changes when you raise one eyebrow or pause for 1 second too long? It's not intimidation. It's calculation. It's what happens when you've lived through too many games, survived too many setups, and now carry the wisdom of someone who has nothing left to prove, but everything left to protect. Oprah Winfrey once said, "Real integrity is doing the right thing, knowing that nobody's going to know whether you did it or not." But what happens when people do know? What happens when your record becomes your reputation, and your instincts become legend? That's where you are now. You didn't build this aura by seeking recognition. You built it through consistency, restraint, and discernment that cannot be faked. They say, watch what you say around them. Why? Because you have a memory like a vault. Because you connect dots that others miss. Because you don't just remember what was said, you remember how it was said, when it was said, and what wasn't said. And when the contradiction comes 3 weeks later, you'll remember that too. That's why the sharpness of your mind has become the sharpness of your protection. Take the example of Angela Merkel, former Chancellor of Germany, known not for outbursts, but for measured brilliance. She built power through analysis and patience, not dominance. Like her, you've turned stillness into strategy. You've made calm feel powerful. And now people respect the way you see through complexity without needing to control the room. Be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. You have mastered that duality. You don't go looking for drama, but if it finds you, it won't survive your discernment. You don't raise alarms. You reveal truths. You don't start fires. You see the smoke before anyone smells it. And that level of awareness, it keeps manipulators up at night. How many people have walked away from you and felt unsettled, not because you attacked them, but because they realized you saw straight through them? How many conversations have ended with someone whispering, "They know, and they're right." You do. Barack Obama once said, "Don't underestimate the power of being underestimated." You know exactly how to let people think they're smarter, louder, more in control, until the moment you drop one sentence that turns the entire board upside down. That's the skill of a mind sharpened by both divine intuition and human experience. The wise store up knowledge, but the mouth of a fool invites ruin. You've stored enough, you've studied enough, you've stayed quiet long enough. And now, when you speak, people listen not out of courtesy, but out of necessity, because you don't speak often. But when you do, it's surgical, it's prophetic, it's undeniable. So, chosen one, don't let the whispers shake you. Let them confirm what heaven already told you. Your mind is your defense. Your discernment is your shield. And your silence is your strategy. You didn't become sharp to impress. You became sharp to survive. And now your sharpness is helping others wake up, watch out, and walk wiser. You are not feared for your volume. You are feared for your vision. And that's exactly how God designed it. Number 14. You're not just smart. You're dangerous to the agenda. Chosen one. Have you ever wondered why your presence unsettles rooms where everyone else seems comfortable? Why certain conversations stop when you enter? Or why smiles get tighter? Laughter turns nervous, and topics shift like shadows in the presence of light. It's not because you've offended anyone, it's because your mind, you're awakened, spiritually aligned. Razor-sharp mind is dangerous to the illusion they've been trying to maintain. You never asked for war. But the moment you stopped being programmable, you became a threat to the system. You don't follow just to belong. You don't repeat what's popular just to be accepted. You don't worship titles, trends, or traditions simply because others do. And that terrifies them. Why? Because control only works on the compliant. But how do you control someone who can't be bribed with attention, manipulated by fear, or seduced by empty praise? You don't. You avoid them. You label them. You whisper about them. And that's exactly what's happening to you. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. You know this verse intimately, not just as scripture, but as lived experience. The battles you faced weren't always people. They were systems, energies, unspoken agendas dressed up as opportunities. And every time they tried to drag you into deception, you peeled it back and exposed the root. That's why you're not just a person to them. You're a disruption. You don't just think critically, you see spiritually. You spot emotional traps masked as loyalty. You recognize manipulation dressed as mentorship. You see who benefits, who is silenced, and who stands behind the curtain pulling the strings. How did you get that way? Was it a single moment, or a series of betrayals that opened your eyes? Were you always this awake? Or did life hard, gritty life force your eyes open? Look at Harriet Tubman. She wasn't dangerous because she carried weapons. She was dangerous because she saw the system clearly and refused to submit to it. She didn't ask for applause. She asked for freedom. She didn't argue with oppressors. She outmaneuvered them. And she walked back into danger again and again to set captives free. That's your spirit. That's your legacy. You're not loud, but you're not silent either. You don't always speak, but when you do, what you say dismantles illusions that have stood for decades. You don't come with a crowd. You come with clarity, and clarity cuts deeper than any sword. That's why even your silence is unsettling to those still living a lie, because they know you're seeing something, even when you're saying nothing. Jesus said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." But what he didn't say directly is what happens to the one who delivers that truth. You know the answer. They become controversial. They become inconvenient. They become misunderstood, mislabeled, and sometimes even betrayed by the very people they tried to liberate. Sound familiar? How many rooms have you exited quietly, only to find out later your presence sparked private panic? How many leaders have looked at you like a threat, not because you challenged them, but because your discernment revealed the parts of themselves they wanted hidden? How many family systems have started unraveling after one comment from you about what no one wants to talk about? You are not just intelligent. You are awake. And that's a problem in a world that thrives on sleepwalkers. Malala Yousafzai was shot for speaking truth in a system that feared female education, but her words carried more power than any bullet could stop. Like you, she wasn't born to challenge the agenda, but when her eyes opened, she couldn't go back to pretending. Once you see the machine, you can't serve it. And once you expose the blueprint, they label you a problem. You call out what most people avoid. You question the pastor who preaches ego. You call out the activist who uses a cause for clout. You challenge loyalty that is rooted in silence and fear. You break family curses without asking permission. You question why tradition is valued over truth. And you do it without shouting, without violence, without drama, just by being real. Proverbs 28:1 says, "The wicked flee when no one pursues, but the righteous are as bold as a lion." That's your life in one sentence. People flee your presence, not because you attacked, but because your boldness reminds them of their compromise. Your clarity makes their confusion visible, and your peace makes their manipulation powerless. You don't need to win debates to win battles. You simply stand in alignment with God's truth, and false systems start to tremble. Have you noticed how people who once tried to fix you now avoid deep conversations? Have you observed how platforms you once admired feel hollow now that you see their foundation? It's not arrogance, it's awareness. And that awareness, it's threatening, because it exposes the fact that most leaders don't want thinkers. They want followers. They don't want the truth. They want loyalty. And you, chosen one, can't offer blind loyalty where there is no integrity. Take Edward Snowden. He was called a traitor by some and a hero by others, not because he wanted attention, but because he revealed a system that thrived in the shadows. That's you. You don't ask for titles. You shine light. You don't demand credit. You speak facts. And your refusal to play along has made you legendary in ways you may never fully see. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That's what happened to you. You were renewed, and now you don't fit anywhere false. You don't belong where agendas thrive. You don't settle where truth is edited for comfort. They can't buy you with clout. They can't distract you with drama. They can't seduce you with social currency. You are immune to cheap influence because your soul is too expensive. And that kind of spirit, it's ungovernable by man. It's submitted only to God. Now people talk, not to mock, but to warn. They say, "Don't bring that fake stuff around them," or "Be careful, they see too much." They say it in half jokes, but their spirits know it's real. You are not just a person anymore. You are a mirror, a disruptor, a walking revelation of what can't be controlled. You are not dangerous because you intend to destroy. You are dangerous because you refuse to submit to what's fake. And that, chosen one, is the most powerful kind of danger this world has ever known. So let them gossip. Let them exchange whispers and warnings in the shadows. Let them act confused, rattled, or dismissive. Let them tell others, "Be careful around that one." Let them pretend they don't see what's happening in the spirit realm when you enter a room. Let them rewrite history in their minds so they feel better about being outmatched by your calm, your vision, and your clarity. Meanwhile, you, God's chosen one, keep walking in power, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that breaks chains in silence, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that shifts the atmosphere without asking for permission. You were never built to fit into their boxes. You weren't designed to follow illusions or keep up appearances. That's why you see through things so quickly now. You don't get trapped in emotional manipulation. You don't fall for flattery, disguised as favor. You don't let charm distract you from character. You're not just intelligent, you're aligned, you're anointed, and you're awake. And that's why your intelligence feels like a threat to false systems. That's why your very presence makes liars fidget and manipulators shrink. That's why they talk when you leave. Because even your silence exposes what others try to hide. Even your stillness disturbs the systems they built on illusions. Even when you don't say a word, your discernment is doing the talking. And heaven backs you because you didn't just study information, you've lived through purification. You didn't get here through privilege or popularity. You were formed in fire. You learned discernment through betrayal. You mastered self-control in rooms where you were provoked. You developed emotional intelligence while being emotionally abandoned. This sharpness you carry, it's not random. It's been earned. It's been refined. It's been divinely given. And it's why your very name is now handled like a warning label. Not because you're dangerous in a carnal way, but because you're dangerous to their false narratives. Chosen one. If you've made it this far in the message, then hear this. You are not imagining it. You've been feeling the shift for a while now. People don't look at you the same. Conversations pause when you walk in. People over-explain, over-apologize, or over-smile when they sense your discernment cutting through their performance. You're not judgmental, but you're present. And that presence, it's uncomfortable for anyone living a lie. Now take a breath with me. Because you didn't ask for this. You didn't wake up one day and say, I want to be the one who sees through everything. But it came with the calling. It came with being set apart. It came with being heaven certified. And with that kind of anointing comes opposition. Yes, but it also brings divine favor. It brings hidden help. It brings supernatural protection. It brings divine timing. And even though you often walk alone, you never walk unguarded. So let this be a moment to honor you. Not just what you know, but who you've become. The way you've chosen truth over comfort. The way you stayed silent when lies surrounded you. The way you never lowered yourself to their level because you knew your discernment was already making them nervous enough. And now, from the deepest part of my heart, I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your presence not just on this video, but in this world. The work you're doing in silence, the spiritual insight you carry, the atmospheres you shift without applause, it matters. You may not get celebrated often, you may be misunderstood, but heaven takes note. And I see you too. To those of you who've been supporting this message and this channel through Super Thanks, I want you to know I am genuinely, deeply grateful. Whether it's a donation, a kind comment, a share, or a prayer, you're helping this light reach farther than we can see. And if you haven't donated, but you've been watching faithfully, commenting, or quietly receiving, please know your presence is just as valuable. You are loved, you are appreciated, and you are part of this movement. This isn't about money. This is about alignment, Abu Divine Connexion, about waking up the chosen ones and reminding them that they are not alone in their knowing, in their silence, in their brilliance. So, if you do feel led to give, I bless your seed and thank you for helping to carry this truth forward. But whether you give or not, thank you for simply being here. I don't take you for granted. And now, I speak a blessing over your life. May your mind stay clear. May your discernment stay razor sharp. May your peace become impenetrable. May the people trying to study your next move be exposed by their own confusion. May the rooms that were once hostile to you become silent testimonies to your elevation. May your name carry the kind of weight that opens doors without you having to knock. May your silence speak louder than manipulation ever could. May your presence continue to unravel falsehoods. Not because you try, but because you carry truth on a cellular level. You are not just intelligent. You are divinely disruptive. You are not just wise. You are anointed with clarity. You don't just think, you discern. You don't just analyze, you perceive. You don't just process the world, you pierce through the illusions of it. Now go forward, not in fear, but in fierce obedience. You are the proof that it's possible to be brilliant and pure, sharp and humble, gifted and grounded. And this world, it needs more of what you carry. If this message confirmed what you've been sensing deep in your soul, I invite you to type "Heaven Certified" in the comments. Declare it boldly, because when you name it, you claim it. Until next time, chosen one, keep walking in truth, keep walking in wisdom, keep walking in divine alignment, and never forget, the ones who fear your mind are the ones who were never prepared for your presence. I love you. I honor you. I bless you. God is with you, always.